Okay.
We're on.
Live.
Happy days. Cool. So, welcome back. Episode 2. We still calling these episodes?
You are, so let's do it.
Yeah, why not? I like it. Let's go with episodes until we think of something else. So episode 1, series 1 was received quite well, I think. There was a lot of sort of positive feedback from it. And then, I don't know about you, I got fairly bombarded with various other questions and things, which is obviously great. But given that we're only sort of trying to keep these to about half an hour, it's an issue. So again, much same as last week, I've picked 2 questions that I think are quite topical at the minute. I think you've done the same. If I'm right.
Yeah, I've picked 2 as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think given everything that's going on, obviously with lockdown and gyms closing and all that kind of stuff, I feel like it's probably a good shout to kind of stay around that. So nutrition for lockdown, training with nothing, questions around that sort of thing, because obviously that's quite important and topical at the minute. Let's just dive in, I suppose.
You want to start?
Yeah, why not? So I got a question from Matt, who's one of our members. And he's, well, I say he's one of our members. He was one of our members, and then he disappeared off to Dubai and is now currently living it up over there.
Rude.
At pool parties and that kind of stuff, while we're over here getting rained on with no gyms to play in. So I feel like I don't want to answer his question out of spite, but it's a good question, so I'm going to. So he's asked, how do you train mental game for competitions? Now, obviously competitions are a little bit off-key at the minute because there ain't any, but I think the mentality question is a good one, especially at the moment, because obviously mentality is going to be a huge player in how you kind of ride out the next few weeks or months or however long we're in this for. So this is one of those questions. And again, I feel like we should call this podcast the It Depends podcast, because it's going to be quite a common theme, I feel. Yeah. So mentality is very much, and it depends on the individual. You know, and I think there's so many variables in it. From my point of view as a sort of coach and training thing, there's no cookie cutter answer to this one. Personally speaking, my mentality takes a hit when I've got nothing to train for. So if I've got a competition in the diary, then I'm quite focused on that. And you've got a thing to train for. You've got events you need to hit if it's a strongman contest, or the numbers you're trying to hit for a weightlifting comp or whatever it's going to be. But if I've got nothing in the diary to train for, then it becomes harder. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think it very much depends on the individual. That said, I know other people that are just completely focused all year round. But with lockdown, obviously no one's really got anything to train for. So I think that means mentality-wise, you need to give yourself a little bit of slack. I think is probably the best advice from it. Because if you start saying, I need something to train for, I haven't got anything, therefore this is a waste of time, then you're just burying yourself into a hole you're going to struggle to get out of again. It's a very broad stroke answer. I don't know, would you agree, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I've been thinking about this one since you mentioned that was a question you had the other day. And I actually did a post that's sort of related to this morning, I think, on Instagram. And the thing with it is that there are sort of 2 things that I think about here. One is that you compete based on your numbers and how strong you are on the day. So last time I checked, there's no award for the person who's most switched on or most on it all year round. Yeah. That's completely irrelevant as a metric of how well you're doing. The end goal is to be as strong as you can on the day. For a lot of people, that isn't going to be best achieved by being switched on, 100% on it, focused year round. It's not sustainable. So now is really a good time to not completely switch off and just go, fuck it, I'm not going to bother, but to just pull back a little bit. Some people have got the mental capacity now for the next month to properly crack on and do the best they can, and that's great. If you have, do it. But if you haven't, that's not an issue. And the other thing with this is that people get really hung up on what they should be doing, and as soon as you tell yourself this is how I should be, if you don't meet that expectation, you're disappointed in yourself, and there's shame and guilt and everything that goes with that. If you tell yourself, actually, I shouldn't feel like that, I should feel like I should be able to chill for the next month, then you will, and you'll feel absolutely great, and you'll come back even stronger in the gym. So
yeah,
I think, just chilling out a little bit is one of those things that you periodise around comps in the same way that you periodise everything else. And now's probably the time to chill because there's no comps coming up. Everyone else is struggling with life. So just, pull back a little bit.
Yeah, massively. Completely agree. It's you kind of nailed it in the sense of, people pigeonhole themselves and say, if I'm not doing this, I'm failing. Mm-hmm. And that's a really dangerous mindset to get into. And I think it's one we're all guilty of going into, but I don't think anyone can honestly say that they're quite laid back when they're not in training and that sort of stuff, and they don't put pressure on themselves. It's bullshit. Everyone does. It's human nature.
Yeah.
But I feel like now more than ever, it's quite important just to have that little rein it back a little bit. Don't worry about if your training goes tits up, because it's going to, because you can't go to the gym. Unless you've got a bad app, then you're going to have to take a hit, unfortunately. There's a few bits you can do, but that's a whole other conversation. You know, there's kind of things you can do to keep skill high. We tapped on that last time, didn't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, 100% rein it in a little bit. Chill out. With your mindset, just try and, I guess the sort of bottom line is just try not to be a dick to yourself. Take the pressure off. You're going to be all right. Just chill out a bit. Take a month off. Let's call it recovery. Let's call it a powerlifter's rest set.
Yeah.
Let's do that, because they're famously about an hour between sets.
Yeah,
so
at least.
Take a month. You'll be all right.
Yeah. But no, you're right. We all do it. And if you don't do it with training and nutrition, you do it with other things. So like if I started again, I'd probably call myself the hypocritical coach. So I do most of the stuff I tell my clients not to. But like with work and business, I'm sure you're the same. I refuse to do this. I'm literally trying to go 100%. You just can't. And you end up on your ass burnt out. So yeah, you try and I have to try and take my nutrition advice to people for my work, because I do the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like we had a very brief conversation before we hit record about potentially taking our foot off the gas a little bit, and then we kind of went, nah.
Yeah, and you're talking about some big boy numbers as well coming up.
So, yeah, man. Yeah, should be good fun. Exciting things in the pipeline. Let's go with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, that's my first question. What's yours? Let's go with you.
My first one was, what is the best macro split in terms of percentages for over lockdown?
Great question.
So I want to start this question with a little analogy. So if I say to you, for example, I'm going to give you, Charlie, 40% of everything I've got. You might think, well, actually, that's really reasonable. I'm quite happy with that. Brilliant, 40% of whatever Charlie's got. If I've got jack shit, 40% of jack shit is jack shit. So suddenly that percentage, no matter how great the percentage sounds, is a waste of time if you don't look at the bigger picture. And macro splits are the same thing. Percentages of macros is a stupid idea, full stop. You could get the percentage. If I say you've got to have 30% of your meals, your calories from protein, 30% from fat, and the rest from carbs. That's great. But if you only eat 500 calories per day, you could hit those percentages and still have sod all.
Yeah.
So I don't know any coach, nutritionist, anything worth their salt that uses percentages of calories for macros, because it just doesn't work like that. Like when you actually start doing the numbers, it doesn't play out. So what we do is do it in grams per kilogram, because then when you work out the grams per kilogram in terms of macronutrients, add all those up in calories, they then make sense.
Yeah.
So if you ask what should I be eating over lockdown, obviously the answer is it depends.
Drink. Should definitely be a drinking game. Every time
it's like bingo, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, we'd be wasted, mate. But like, so roughly anything over 2 grams per kilogram of protein is a good start. I mean, that's my next question, which I'll come on to, so I'll leave that there. Above 0.5 grams per kilo of fat, and then carbohydrate is going to depend on how active you are. And that's basically how I set up most people's diets. So you need to get sufficient protein to keep some muscle on. You need some fat so you don't die, just for normal health and stuff, and absorption of vitamins and minerals and hormonal function and things like that. And then carbs is very much dependent on your goal and how active you are. For most people, it's going to be somewhere between 3 and 6 grams per kilo, depending on what their goal is and how active they are. And you could work off that. So if you think, I want to lose a little bit of body fat over lockdown, I'm not doing much training, you probably go towards about 3 grams per kilo of carbohydrate, which is about 200 grams for a lot of people, which is plenty. If you are still training, looking to put some weight on, you probably go further down the other end of it. And that's probably a good baseline for a lot of people. Obviously, there's so much nuance to it that it's difficult to give a concrete answer. But if you work off those numbers, that's a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I'd go along with that. So my knowledge around nutrition and that kind of thing is such that it's not a question I'm qualified to answer. But if I was pushed to give an answer, it'd sound exactly like what you just said. It's the kind of, I don't really understand the whole macro split thing and percentages. I understand macros, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand when people start talking about it in that respect, and people get really into it. And I think the grams per kilo thing is a lot better, as you say, because you can equate that to calories in.
Yeah.
You can really, I think that's just a lot more accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also an awful lot more tangible. I like the analogy. I like the analogy of 40% of fuck all is still fuck all.
It is, yeah.
No, it really is. So yeah, no, strong. I've got nothing really to add to that.
Nice. Wow.
Like it, yeah, fully agree. Like
done a
it.
job then. There we go.
Awesome. Yeah, man. I mean, in fairness, it's more just me staying in my lane because I don't know enough
Yeah.
about nutrition, which is why I respect that. Good at nutrition. I do exercise. That's my thing. I'm good at like teaching people to pick shit up. That's kind of it.
And I'm awful at that.
Perfect. So there you go. It's weird. Right. Anyway, next question. So this is from Isabel. She asked, is walking an exercise that will keep you healthy, or is it not that helpful? Or fit and healthy, I think is what she said. It depends. Drink. Walking at the minute is an option for pretty much everybody. Or kind of getting out and doing some stuff outside and going for your walk or a stroll or whatever it is you've got access to. I think a lot of people are going to be having that over what they had in the gym beforehand because gyms are shut. So at the moment, to blanket your answer, walking is really helpful, 100% for many different things. One, it's going to keep your steps up because that's a thing. It's going to get you out. It's going to give you some heart rate increase. It's going to get you a little bit of exercise. So yeah, walking's awesome. And at the moment, it's beautiful outside. You know, walking's quite nice. All the colours are nice and the leaves are crispy and stuff. So if we're going to go down a real holistic kind of point, it's great to go for a walk around now. It's some really nice parts of the world. To answer the question, is it helpful or not in relation to what is the question I kind of tangle back to. If you're a power lifter and you're deadlifting 200 kilos for reps every other week, something I don't know where we're going to put this split into, then walking's not going to help you increase that. It's not a thing. So it depends on the individual's needs. And I think for the sake of this, we'll stick to strength sport athletes because that's what we're talking about. So walking now is great for just general broad stroke health, inverted commas. But it's not going to help you increase your lifts. But given it's the only thing we really have access to at the minute, yeah, it's absolutely helpful. If we were to veer off ever so slightly away from kind of strength sports, then yeah, absolutely. You know, if you're talking like rugby players, there's probably some benefit in there for rugby players. I don't know if you could turn the walk into kind of an interval run, that might be a little bit more beneficial. But saying the word run puts a little bit of bile at the back of my throat, so we're going to move swiftly on from that topic. But yeah, so again, it very much depends. I don't think there was a concrete answer for it, but I thought it was quite a good question to tangent off of. Mm-hmm. Just in the sense, is it healthy and what's fit? Like, what does healthy look like? What does fit look like? And why does walking translate to that?
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger, broader question to ask around.
Yeah, and I think if you define those two, it becomes very clear that it's good for one and not for the other. So health is a really broad stroke where you look at mental health, social health, physical health, all those things. Fitness is the ability of your body to meet the demands of a given activity. So like you said, if you're a powerlifter, is walking going to help with your deadlift or going to help your body meet the demands of a 1 rep max deadlift? Absolutely not, no. But in terms of health, is it good to get outside for mental health, cognitive health, physical health? Pretty much every marker of health we have would be improved by people being outside more and walking and being more active in general. Like, we are built to move. So 100% it is healthy. In terms of fitness, it's probably not going to contribute much. But then you've got to argue that health itself underpins your fitness. So you can be fit and healthy, but if you're not healthy, you won't be fit for too long. You break down, like, again, physical, mental, social. So by looking after the health side of things with a walk, you'll end up being fitter because you're able to give more when it comes to the fitnessy bit. So yeah, 100% walking outside. If people do one thing over lockdown, is walk every single day outside, regardless of whether you'll come out of it a little bit healthier than you would have been otherwise.
Definitely. And it just also avoids that whole cabin fever thing, doesn't it? We've all been stuck in our houses for long enough now. And I mean, I love my house, but shit, the bed. Like, the same four walls get really tiring after a while. So that's the thing. And also, I found walking outside is a great way to put my 3-month-old to sleep.
Ah, nice.
She loves it. Go bowling down a little rocky lane. I must have done about 10 lengths of that the other day trying to get her off to sleep. Still screaming. Turns out she was hungry and I didn't with that one, so that's all right. But yeah, walking's great. But yeah, so in terms of the question, I think the broad answer would be yes, if we were to nail like a yes or no binary to it, but as per, it very much depends on individual. So I think that's a pretty well-rounded answer for that. Hope that helped. I think it would have done.
Yeah.
We're rocketing through these today, man.
We're doing
all right.
Yeah, I've got one more. But yeah, we've got through them quite quick. The other question I had was, I'm not training over lockdown, so should I have more protein? Um, more protein is a difficult one because that's suggesting you've got a baseline level of protein at the moment, which you will have. I don't know what that is, so it's difficult for me to say. If you're already eating like 3 calories per day, no. But then I'm going to go off what most people have in terms of protein at the moment, and the answer is yes. So most people do undereat on protein. So I think the question is more, if you're doing less, should you increase your protein above what you currently do, rather than should this person eat more protein? Because I don't know. It's hard to see what they're eating at the moment. I can't see from here. But
yeah.
But
Also,
in
really,
terms
I feel that's a really broad question as well. Anyway, like how much should I be? Is like, well, there are a billion factors in that.
Yeah. But broadly, if you're inactive, if you've previously been active and you've been inactive at the moment, should you eat more protein? Yes. So with protein, it's sort of your muscle needs a stimulus to grow or to maintain the amount of muscle you've got or to build on that muscle. The biggest stimulus your muscle gets is your training, which people sometimes forget and think like protein's the most important thing. Your training is the most important stimulus. As hard as it is for me as a nutritionist to say, I'm irrelevant if you don't train in terms of muscle gains. I can give you all the protein in the world. If you've not got a training stimulus, you're not growing muscle by just eating more cow. It doesn't happen. But if there isn't that training stimulus there, we need to provide probably a greater stimulus to the muscle in terms of food in order to try and keep as much muscle on as possible. So we have some really good research from like injury research. So obviously people are immobilized when they're injured, they're in tests, they're bedbound, they're not moving much. And we know that it's a little bit more difficult to get protein synthesis. So to try and get that growth, we need a little bit more protein to sort of stimulate that. The other area where they've looked at this is in old people. Old people and injured people are, funnily enough, very similar in that they don't move much. They're not moving much. They don't do any training, and they have this chronic low-grade inflammation. So, which is really common in injured people because they're not moving, but also in old people as well. And when you have that, we get this thing called anabolic resistance. So your muscle actually is a little bit resistant and won't respond in the same way to protein it normally would. So in order to help it respond, we give it more protein. So I mentioned at the start about 2 grams per kilo is a good measure in injured people, inactive people, people who are trying to retain some muscle and give it that stimulus. We probably want to go sort of like 2.4 grams per kilo, spread out over 4 or 5 meals. So just divide that. Say you were 100 kilos, for example, 2.4 would be 240 grams per kilo, 240 grams per day. Spread that over 4 or 5 meals, which is like what, 50-ish grams per day. Yeah, is that right? 60, 50, 60, 50, 60. Spread that out over 4 or 5 meals, spaced out evenly. Job's good.
Happy days. Yeah, and again, my touch on that topic is I agree. Nutrition is very much not my strength. I know enough to offer blah, blah. I'm doing it now, tripping over my words.
Yeah.
Oh mate, what is happening? I feel like tripping over your words is the new COVID. Controversial. Yes. But yeah, I feel like I don't know enough about it to answer that question. So yeah, fully agree. I like the comparison to old people and injured people. I can't wait for the backlash on that one because people are going to do it's again from last week's straw man argument. So what you're basically saying is all old people are injured?
Yeah, literally. Or
100%. That's it. That's
all
correct.
People that get injured turn 70 years old. Is that what you're saying?
Fact.
No. But that's because in terms of research and injuries, everyone's injury is different. Every mechanism for injury is different. So we can't look at injuries in athletes very well. But what we can look at is what happens when you are injured and who else do we see that in, and then sort of use them instead. So we're just using old people.
Populations, yeah. I get it. And I can't wait to find the people that don't get it because they're going to be fun.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yes.
Awesome, man. So I feel like this is a live news broadcast. So we just had a question in. This is quite a good one. And I feel like we've got a little bit of time left. So I feel we can answer this one.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to answer this one because it kind of tails on the back of our first question, as in mentality. Mm-hmm. This is from the one and only Lucy Halpin.
Ah.
There you go. So she's asked about the effects of stress on nutrition, training, and weight numbers. So stress is a really good topic. And at the minute, I feel like it's a very important topic. I don't know many people that aren't stressed to shit currently with everything that's going on through various reasons, be that not sure about your work, training, state of whatever's going on in your world currently, without going too much into individual things. I feel like everyone's got a certain element of stress, which is somewhat heightened at the moment. If you're really chilled, do get in touch because I have questions.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
why?
Yeah, like, what do you know that I don't?
Yeah. Basically just Boris, who seems pretty chill about the whole thing, to be fair.
He is laid back as shit, man.
Yeah.
Which in a way I have to respect, because he's got probably the most stressful job in the world. So to look that chill,
I suppose if you don't give a shit, then it's hard to actually
fair. Also controversial.
Yeah.
But yeah. So back to the question before we delve into the politics hole. The effects of stress on nutrition, training, and weight and numbers. I mean, from my point, stress is huge. If you go, I mean, and this could be a day-to-day analogy we could give. If you go to the gym one day, let's say that day is Monday, and you smash out reps at 80% triples and you just grind through them all day long and they feel like 70%, you're moving great, you feel amazing, you leave the gym on a high. You go to the gym on Wednesday after having a nice day on Tuesday, nice and recovered, good food, that sort of thing. You go to the gym on Wednesday and you feel like dog shit. There could have been something that happened in between that, and there's a stress thing into that. Like if you didn't train on Tuesday, but you had all good food and everything was there, and all the ducks lined up nicely, but your boss chewed you out at work, and you've got that in your head, and you've got some deadlines to hit or something like that. All of a sudden, Wednesday's session is going to feel like crap because of that extra bit of stress. So I think I could categorically say stress plays a huge part on performance, and I can say that because there is an enormous body of research around it, and it's proved. Stress does have an impact. I don't think you could categorically say what that impact is. I don't think it's tangible. You can't say X level of stress because it's not measurable. It's quite subjective. But yeah, it's going to have a huge impact. So, and again, I think that goes back to that first question, the sort of mentality and just being a bit nicer to yourself, right? If you're stressed, you need to understand your shit's going to suffer for it. Stuffer? I think that's like suffer with an extra letter in it. Yeah. I like it. Your shit's going to suffer for it if you are stressed. So again, it's just to be a little bit cute about how you go about your training and nutrition and that kind of thing for that day or that week or that period of time that you're just under the cosh a little bit. I think just don't worry about it. If you had an amazing session on Monday, but you're stressed as shit for a month, that Monday will come back again. Like, you're all good. Just do what you got. I feel like that's kind of the best sort of round answer to that question from my point of view, from a training point of view. How about like stress in terms of stretch?
Stretch.
Oh, my 3-month-old needs to sleep more. That's what needs to happen. Stress in relation to nutrition is the question.
So, I guess first of all, not all stress is equal or bad. So training's a stressor. So, like, to go real meta and philosophical on it, like, we want stress. A life without stress is a really meaningless, boring life. So some stress is good, but that's probably a little bit.
Be a t-shirt right there.
Yeah, that's a little bit high level, to be fair. So I'll leave that one there. But it's worth noting that people just talk about stress as if it's an immediately negative thing, and it isn't. From a nutrition perspective, there are some physical stuff which maybe we'll touch on next time, because we haven't got loads of time, so we'll leave the sort of physiological stress response for now.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the sort of emotional side, which most people are more interested in anyway. It normally relates to, people normally go one of two ways. They'll either stop eating because they're stressed, or they'll eat everything in sight because they're stressed. Both are coping mechanisms to deal with stress. And like, emotional eating occasionally is okay. Like, food is not just a functional thing, it's a social thing, an emotional thing. We enjoy food, so occasional emotional eating is really good. But if it's a repetitive thing every single time you get any sort of stressor, that's when it's a negative thing. And it usually comes down to people not having multiple coping mechanisms for stress. So if you just say, well, that's the only thing I do when I'm stressed is I eat, then if that's all you've got, that's all you'll do. Like, walking outside is a really good example of one way you can de-stress without food. And there are loads of different ways, aren't there? I'm sure you've got a few different coping mechanisms for stress. I like to read for a bit. I like to have a bath, play my guitar a bit, go outside for a walk, training for some people. So it's just about building up an arsenal of different ways you can cope with stress that aren't food.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember what the other thing that I was going to say was, because it's been a very long day already. I'm quite stressed and therefore have forgotten the answer to this question.
Maybe you should go for a walk outside.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'll go play my guitar for a bit. Yeah, so basically, that's what emotional eating comes down to, is not having enough coping mechanisms to deal with stress. That was the other thing. I've just reminded myself of it now by just rambling on.
Okay.
If you tell yourself you're an emotional eater, you'll be an emotional eater. So there is this self-fulfilling prophecy of you'll do what your self-talk is. You become whatever you tell yourself. So, which doesn't work. So I've told myself I want to be an astronaut, and I'm literally not an astronaut. So that's.
Oh man, believe in yourself. I have faith.
Yeah, okay. Maybe next year. But yeah, so if you tell yourself you're an emotional eater, you're gonna eat emotionally because you've already decided that that's the case. So just tell yourself a different story, and you'll become something else. Last bit on weight is that stress causes weight gain through water retention. You've not gained 3 kilos of fat overnight. You've retained some water. That can happen. That could be training stress. It could be psychological stress. It could be any sort of stressor. What you'll sometimes see is that people see that, freak out that they've got fat, and then emotionally eat, and then they will put some weight on because they've eaten in a calorie surplus for a couple of days because they're upset about the weight gain. So yeah, like you said, go back to your point of just chill out a little bit, because stress will negatively affect things in the long run. That's the short answer to a very big question.
Yeah, that's a massive question, but I thought it was quite nice to tap on at the last bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool, man. I think that's probably about all we're going to have time for today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we covered a lot off there, man. That's 5 questions done, and I feel like there's sort of enough sort of fat to chew on, so to speak. So awesome. I think we'll leave it there. But as can I say as usual, our second one?
You can now, yeah.
As usual, as per every other time we did this, the last time, send your questions in for the next one for episode 3.
Yeah.
I think we were speaking briefly about last time. I feel like we need to keep these sort of quite specific to lockdown because that's very topical at the minute, and it's a very real thing. So I think talking about kind of training protocols and performance nutrition and stuff is kind of nonsense at the moment. I don't think it has that big of an impact on people. There's certainly there'll be some questions that come through that are definitely worth answering, but I feel like real kind of lockdown training nutrition questions are going to be helpful. So we're going to stick with that vein, but DM us your questions. Obviously, there are Instagrams. Charlie, this one, which you can't see me pointing on sound podcast. Can't see me there. And also, I might be the other way around, but he's on my left on my screen if you're watching this on YouTube. He's at CBNutrition_ on Instagram, and you'll find me at Redbeard Barbell Club or at Night Strength. And that's us. So drop us some questions for the next one. If there's anything you wanted to know about, any questions on this, dump them in the comments, ask us some questions. Anything you want to chat about, we're all ears, or keyboards, as the case may be. So get in touch. More than happy to help, and have a very happy lockdown.
Awesome.
Cheers,
mate.
Oh, that is. Nice one.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Cheers, Charlie. See you soon, mate.
See ya.